dance for.
So welcome to Sensible Secondhand Classics. Very special episode this time. This is a 1968 MG Midget 1275 Mark II. Sorry, no, Mark III. I get confused because the square and round arch cars on a Mark III are not considered separate marks. This has been very kindly lent to me by Alex and Lyndon from the Alex Assets YouTube channel, and it is amazing. I apologise for the shaky camera and also the fact that the lighting is dreadful. It's just the way that it sort of goes. Also, I'm having to double declutch a lot of the time in this car because we actually don't have synchromesh on first, and the handbrake's not very good. So the Midget came out in 1961. It is actually a development of the Austin Healey Frog Eye Sprite. The first engine that was in this in 61 was actually the same as a 948cc engine that is similar to the one of the Austin A35, developing 46 horsepower, which yeah, it's not a lot. It was upgraded, I think, in 62 to about 56 horsepower. Then later there was a 1098cc engine that came in 64 in the Mark II model. That was 59 horsepower. This is a 1275cc engine that came in the Mark III, which started production in 66. And it's got 65 horsepower, which, to be honest, doesn't sound like a lot, but it's absolutely plenty for this car. There's no question about it. It's absolutely plenty. In 1974, the car underwent a very, very big modification. Now, in about 1969-1970, the car had received a new grille and some, black sills and things like that. But in 72, it went to the different shaped arches, and then they changed them back in 74 when they put the big rubber bumpers on, messed around with the ride height and all kinds of things like that. That car also had a different engine. It was the engine out of a Triumph Spitfire. It's a 1.5 litre with, again, 65 horsepower. But because of the extra torque of the engine and the gearing, the car actually was a bit faster. Production finished about end of 79, so lots of them were still around. They were registered on 1980, sometimes 81 plates, I think. But Abingdon closed down, and that was very sad. In terms of what this car's like to drive, it is very, very responsive, actually, very responsive. The brakes have no servo assistance whatsoever, just as when I drove that Mark II Volkswagen Polo quite recently, so I get used to that. But this car is very, very light, so again, you don't necessarily notice the lack of the servo assistance. It's actually got a hydraulic clutch, which I find really quite surprising in a car from 1968. And this gearbox is quite nice. You've just got to be aware that you've got no synchro on first, which means that coming up to traffic lights and things is entertaining. I do like it though, viewers. I mean, I think you can still pick an MG Midget up for about £5,000. I'm pretty sure you can. It's not going to be as nice as this one. It really won't be. But this is worth a fair bit more, and it's been, lovingly cared for by Alex and Linda. So don't expect that to be looking on Auto Trader right now or Car and Classic and thinking that one of these would fall into your budget of this exact model. But maybe a rubber bumper one or something like that, or like a sort of rougher later car will be sort of better. wish I had an extra gear, viewers, because it's only got a 4-speed gearbox and doing about 45 miles an hour, and it's a tiny little bit noisy. Well, viewers, this car does look exceptionally smart. I mean, the camera's flattering it somewhat, but really it doesn't look that different in real life, unlike some of the cars I film. It's in exceptionally nice condition, this one. It's kind of been done a bit like a sort of rally replica, which explains the sort of mini light style wheels on it, and also the lack of bumpers. Now, there's actually very few cars, in my opinion, that look quite nice without bumpers, but this is one of them. The car doesn't weigh very much. I mean, having actually driven it, it's quite fast, and there's no servo assistance on the brakes whatsoever, but for some reason it doesn't seem to matter too much. It looks ridiculously tiny, and you think, how on earth do you get in and out of this thing? And yeah, that's interesting. You might say, can we see what it looks like with the hood down? And I'm afraid for me today the answer is no. I'm afraid we won't be doing that because it will take absolutely ages. And yeah, I'm sorry about that, viewers. Right, I think what we'll do is I'll get the keys and we'll take a look in the boot, and then we'll take a look under the bonnet. So quite easy to open up. I mean, it's been unlocked, so there we go. Nice full-size spare wheel. You can actually see the filler neck in here as well, which is fantastic. The Frog Eye Sprites didn't even have an opening boot, a bit like the old Standard 8s when they first came out. There's no strut at all in here for having it open. I think actually there is. You can put that, a bit like a bonnet stay. You can use that to keep it open. It's not actually that bad in terms of a space for a tiny little car like this. And then we've got a sort of little period thing in there. I'm not sure what that is, but it looks really, really sort of 60s in there. Fantastic. Right, just close it like that. I like this little spot lamp on the back as well. I think that's really good. The exhaust I don't think is entirely standard. If you actually heard anything I said in the driving section, then you might have heard the exhaust as well. So it's not completely to finish. There are sort of 1 or 2 bits of paint work to do. There we go. That is how you get out of the car, and the door doesn't have a stay on it. It's actually pretty good. We're not on a slope or anything, so the door will stay open, but that is just there to stop the door from flying completely open. If I can just sort of get half in, because getting fully in is quite difficult. So we've got fuel gauge, oil pressure, I think that's water temperature in Fahrenheit, Smith's rev counter, which is very similar to the one I think in a Jaguar E-Type. I think that there is a heater, but I think the switch is the wrong switch for it. I'm sure some of you will know about these things better than me. There's the choke lever, and then we've got all sorts of kind of unmarked sort of things in here. Just typical kind of 60s really. There's the ignition key. It's just a sort of normal twist and go one. Yeah, there's a heater, ammeter there, which I think is an optional extra, and the speedo. This is a motor liter wheel. It wouldn't have originally come with one of these. And there's the little gear lever. Gearbox is actually reasonably nice. You've just got to remember there's no synchro on first gear. No glove box or anything. I mean, there's really not much to sort of say. The mirror's just up there. This car has got an overtaking mirror, which is good. That's the indicator sort just there. And really, there's not much else. I think if I climb out of here without falling over, that's how you pull the door shut. This is a later car, a Mark III, so there actually are winding windows on it. So there we are. That's what it looks like inside. There's no glove box or anything. There's quite a bit of space here to throw things in the back, and the seats do go forward and back, but they are static seat belts made by Britax, which is good. It sort of looks quite period in that sort of way, although I think they are a bit later than 68. It's even got a midget mat in it. Isn't that great? So yes, this car was made, I think, a few months before BMC, or British Motor Holdings it was, because they were merged with Jaguar at the time, actually became British Leyland. So there's no BL influence in this car at all, and because this is an earlier Mark III, it's still got the chrome grille. It's a little Lucas spot lamps as well. So yeah, it's a lovely looking car. This is probably one of the best looking cars we've had on Sensible Secondhand Classics. Well, obviously that's up to debate. Getting the bonnet open in this car was a bit of a complicated process, but we're there. This is actually a Rover P6 bonnet stay, which is why it's kind of a bit bent, but because if you fit an original Midget stay, it's a little bit low. It's a bit like I'm working on a classic Mini. So this is like a replacement to just give a bit more room for working on the car, but it looks a little bit weird. So there we go. It's A series engine, a 1275cc, developing about 65 horsepower. For all the power outputs that I've said in the video, presumably you can actually hear what I was saying, the American power outputs were different. I mean, for example, the 1500cc engine actually developed closer to 50 horsepower rather than 65 when that was in the Mark IV midgets. Yeah, very much detuned to the American emissions regulations. But everything's pretty simple once you raise the bonnet up a bit, and a lot of things are made by Smiths. Battery lives just up there. I mean, it kind of does remind me a bit of other BMC cars like this, like an Austin A35 or something like that, which I think this does share some components with it, although the Frog Eye Sprite, which was a car that was sort of based in some way on it, was more closely related to this. This is a much later car, so it's probably not too many bits sort of the same. But this is a sort of detuned version of the engine used in the Mini Cooper S, although actually mounted the other way with a completely different gearbox. Yes, it's pretty agreeable, viewers. In fact, I like it so much, we're going to go out for another drive. So here we are. I mean, it's the middle of November, but the weather's very good today, and sort of on these little country roads in Gloucestershire, driving this car is just a really nice experience. Maybe if it were me, I'd sort of upgrade perhaps to the MGB, because it's got a bit more room in it. There's not a lot of room in here for somebody like me. It's not the worst. I mean, a Mini I think is the most cramped car I've ever driven, the classic Mini. Whoops, there's the suspension, viewers. I just realised I've got no fifth gear, so I won't be going too fast. But it is just an amazing experience. Like, I've heard people talk about the way these older MGs feel when you drive them, and this has that feel. It's a really, really nice experience. It's not something I want to do every day. It's very loud in here, and the ride is a little bit crashy, as you've just seen. But I can completely understand why somebody would want to buy one of these, and they're still relatively affordable. They're not kind of stupid prices like Mark I Escorts are and things like that. But they're very similar area to that, and there's a reasonable number of them around. People quite rightly in the late 70s recognised that these cars were going to be classics even when they're still in production, and so there's quite a number of them around if you want to sort of look. At the AEC Classic Car Show, there were absolutely loads of these for sale. I mean, there were nice examples with 5-figure price tags, but if you don't mind getting your hands dirty, a lot of people who own these work on them themselves, then for maybe sort of £4,000 to £5,000 you can find a bit of a rough one and discover some DIY maintenance skills and have some fun. Again, viewers, I apologise for the really, really close angle, and well, if you've actually been able to hear anything I've been saying, it's bit loud in this car, but a lot of fun. So viewers, with your budget of between £1,000 and £5,000 to buy yourself a sensible second-hand classic, should you consider an MG Midget? Well, the kind of car you're going to find for under £5,000 won't be as nice as this one. So you will have to do some work on it, and just like a lot of these older British cars, or like any car of this age, you've got to watch it for rust. The engines are actually relatively simple. The A series in particular, which was used until '74, is really quite good in terms of parts availability, and they're chain driven and quite reliable. The later Triumph engine might have a few spares issues sort of there, but if you want a bit more torque, then that's a good one to go for. Is it sensible? No. Is it a classic? Well, absolutely. It's been a classic probably, you know, kind of from the mid-70s onwards, really. I mean, this is a car that dates back to the early 60s of design, and then some elements of it even further. So it's a well-known commodity, and, you know, it's a very good enthusiastic community for these, and I really understand why. You're either really going to want one, or you're not. It's not a very good everyday proposition for most people, I shouldn't think, but I have very much enjoyed it. Anyway, thank you very much indeed once again for watching this episode of Sensible Secondhand Classics. Thank you to Alex and Lyndon from Alex's Assets for letting me have a go in this, particularly with the no synchro and no servo assisted brakes. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Like this video and leave a comment below. It really does very much help. Well, thank you very much indeed once again.